Hello and welcome to Muse Jam Session Recording 155. My name is Dani Beaumont and I'm a Principal Product Manager on the Adobe Muse team. I'm actually up in Seattle, Washington, where the majority of the engineering folks are for the Muse team. I'm happy to be here. I'm joined by Laurel D'Angelo in our marketing group, and also Colby Awesome, as we call him, who is the lead on the quality engineering group. So with both of those folks covering chat, you're always welcome to ask questions that have nothing to do with what I'm presenting. And those two folks will keep an eye on the chat and answer those questions as we go along. If you have questions for me, let's go ahead and switch to my second layout here. In the lower right-hand corner, there is a pod for questions that probably relate to the topic we're covering today. If you fill that in there, I will glance over from time to time and see if I can ease it into the presentation. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. I'm happy to see some friendly faces there in chat. Konstantinos, who's probably somewhere in the world with Al Jazeera, and Ali Pordelli, who does cookie.com. Lots of good friendly faces. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a website. So I was poking around late last night and early this morning, because that's kind of how I roll, and looking at this idea of flat design. So to be honest, Laurel and I were talking about topics to cover going forward, and she mentioned, you know, states and styles and paragraph styles, color swatches seem to be confusing for folks. Could we do a topic on that? And my thought was, okay, we can, but that'll take me a little bit of time. How do I take it a little bit further? And so I was kind of checking out the world a little bit around, you know what? It's always a great idea to start sharing my screen too. So I'm going to do that. And as I do, or before I do so, notice in the resources area, there is a link there. I've got a tiny URL, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you can't necessarily click the link, but you can type that in the browser. So if you want to follow our resources for today, that is the link for it. I'm going to start to share my screen so that we can all be looking at the same thing. And bringing me to the page that I had found. So as I was saying, state styles, that makes sense. But I was kind of looking at the web and seeing what best practices were around button states and styles. And there was a whole lot of conversation around this idea of flat design. So I'm going to add a little bit of that into the topic, or relate what we're going to talk about for states and styles to the flat design movement, I would call it. So let me go ahead and get this out of the way real quick. So if you look at this site here, I think it is a really good example of flat design. I have navigation that's here. I have call to action, so I've got a sign up button that's probably secondary to this primary action that they're calling me to. There's lots of stuff going on. This is all trendy, things that, like any trend, will start to drive you crazy after a fashion. But as I scroll here, I've got a video that's playing in the background. As I scroll up on the page, I have persistent navigation. So there is navigation that's here at the top. Interestingly enough, this persistent navigation doesn't really show you where you are in the site. So if I click on New Features, there's no way to know that I'm on the New Features page, which I think is kind of a design flaw. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. But as I scroll down on the site, I do get that nav that appears there. And I'll come down a little lower here, and I have this idea of tile design that's also here. So as I roll over these areas, they're very subtle, very flat, no depth, right? So it's all flat little elements with very simple calls to action. And in the best practices articles that I have in the resources, they speak a lot of how you as a designer, to really sort of embrace this movement, want to think about how to minimize things. Clients love to go on and on about all the details of their site because every bit is very important. And you as a visual designer, as a web designer, need to put yourself in the shoes of the consumer of that site. So a site owner may say, I want everything. And your job is to really say what is critical about what we communicate on the web. And some of the reason for that is that it's a noisy world. There's so much information out there. Boiling it down to the essence helps the reader, helps the viewer. But another ploy here is this idea of mobile design and really making sure that any information that's presented can lend itself to these very constrained, smaller devices, whether it's a tablet or a smartphone. So the beauty of a tile design is one that allows you to have a desktop view, right? So I've got tiles 3 across here. This is not a site built in Muse, which many people will say, the minute I do this. But notice that as I minimize this, let's say I were on a tablet device, I would have much less information. Interestingly enough, they probably have a phone layout that is an alternate layout, because if I get all the way down to the phone view, this responsive design falls apart. This is not built in Muse. As many of you know, the Muse methodology for designing for mobile is alternate layouts for each of your designs. So it's kind of an example of why alternate layout does make sense, to have something specific for phone. And my hypothesis is if I jumped to a phone device, I would see an alternate layout here. But again, this is a very simple design, very flat in structure, very clear about what tasks or what actions they want to draw us towards. So kind of using this as a goal, this is, I think, is a beautiful site. It's got lots and lots of content, but yet it's still holding on to that tough balance of remaining really simple and clean while you're putting so much information in one place. So I thought it was a good extreme case example. So kind of looking at this as a goal, let's start to break down within Muse how you can apply some of these premises, let's say. So I'm going to come over into Muse, and what I want to do is start to play with some elements. Now I have a site that, for those of you that follow the jam sessions, last couple weeks we've been using it, and these are some starter designs that we're playing with. We're going to start to release those with the next version of Muse, and the goal is mostly for people that are trying Muse out for the very first time to have a real sense of what Muse can do. You're looking right now at File New in Muse, which is kind of classic to Adobe's creative tools. It's a blank canvas. And creative people love that blank canvas. Don't constrain me, don't lock me in. But if you're brand new, you kind of don't know where to begin with Muse. So the starter designs, the intent there is for a user to kind of get on their feet quickly and see what's going on. So I'm going to start to build some of the elements of that starter design. In fact, let's go ahead and look at the finished design that we're working on. It's going to come on in here. So in this starter design, again, it's meant to be very, very simple. I've got some of these same flat design concepts in place. So there's not really any depth here. It's kind of very shallow. There's no shadows trying to suggest three-dimensional structure. As I roll over containers here, you'll notice I'm rolling over the entire story area, and that button state is changing. So it's going from inactive to active. Again, I'm not having that depth. It's not as though I'm pushing a button. I have an over state as I roll over. I don't have a down state in this example. If I click and go somewhere where the link is not really connected to, it will not change that button to show it's depressed. If I click on portfolio, I think, I'm also picking on that one there. It's okay. Let's try this. So back on that page, come on over to portfolio. It's going to take me into the portfolio page. You'll notice again, I have very subtle states here. So I'm seeing that I can click on an image here, and that's indicated to me not by the depth of a button, but simply by how light the image is. When I click it, I'm still getting clues about what I can do here. I've got a previous and next button. As I move through this slideshow, I've got a close button, but it's all very flat and all very subtle. So let's look at how I might build some of these effects within Muse. I'm going to come over into my blank canvas, and let's just start as usual with some of the basics. So I'm going to come on in. Let's say I want to build navigation, and I'm going to try to go for a little bit more of this type of navigation here at the top for this example. So in my design, let's go into my site plan. So we've got some pages to work with. I've got home, we'll add products, or let's say portfolio, an about area, and a contact area. And I'd like to have navigation that works across the design here. So I'm going to come into my master page, and I'm just going to go over to the widget library. And in this library, I have a series of widgets are common web behaviors that can be styled and configured to look like your particular design. But rather than requiring you to make your own menu every time, this widget kind of automates common web tasks. So I'm going to come into the menu area of these widgets, and I'll press and drag a horizontal menu here. I could also do vertical. And for those of you that know much about Muse, which seems like many folks have experience here, one of the clues about widgets is that any of these categories, any of these items in this category can be substituted for another. So if I go into the slideshow area, I've got 5 different slideshows. In all honesty, I could take a basic slideshow and configure it to be a full screen slideshow. For my menus, I'll start with horizontal, but I could change it to vertical pretty easily. So I'm going to press and drag that onto the canvas, and I see that I'm reflecting my site plan. So I've got home, portfolio, about, and contact. And those are in a horizontal state. Now, one of the things we used to do when we first introduced Muse is we, in sort of a wireframe, as Terry White, who is an evangelist for Adobe, says, in a way that's so ugly you have to redesign it, as though we did it by design. You get a starter state for each of the widgets so that you as a designer can understand how the widget is constructed. So yes, it's pretty ugly, but it allows you to quickly understand how to interact with the element. So I've got a menu widget that I've dragged on the canvas here. I can press and drag it to make it larger. I can configure certain attributes here. Notice item size uniform. This says that they'll all be the same size between each other. Actually, I tend to get confused here. Uniform spacing. If I had something like my portfolio from college, the space before and after that area would be the same as this space. Right now, if I set it back to uniform size, they're almost like buttons. No matter what the text would be, this container would not grow in size. So I can configure these attributes based on my design. And as I mentioned, by default, we want to make it easier for you to understand how these things work, because it's not exactly easy. So we've gone in and predefined some styles to each of the states for an object. Now, roughly speaking, every object within Muse can have up to 4 different states. And I used to go to the Apple website to show this off. I'm not convinced that they're still in that same place, but let's go ahead and look, why not? So I'm going to go to the Apple website. And if you focus on their top navigation and not that big iWatch right there, actually the Apple Watch, it's really hard to call it the Apple Watch. But notice that I've got navigation up here at the top of the screen. See how busy sites are. Let's go to a lonely or quiet place. Let's try, iTunes for a second. Okay, so you'll notice I just clicked on iTunes. Very subtly, I have an active state for this aspect of the menu. So iTunes is the page that I'm on. I can tell that because there's a subtle indicator letting me know what page in the nav I'm on. If I roll over Watch, again, they've redesigned their site. It used to be a little bit different, but the over state looks pretty similar to the active state. It's probably very subtly different, but it allows me as a viewer to know that there's a clickable area. When you're talking flat design, it really starts to be important that you give these subtle clues to the viewer of your site around where they can click. I don't know if I can click on iTunes there on the left by looking at it, but if I roll over, I actually get no indicator that I can, other than the fact that it changes to a hand tool. So this is one of those tenuous, I think Apple is classic for this. I've had an iPhone for a long time, maybe 10 years, and there's things I'm still discovering that they've had for 10 years, because you can be too subtle, in my opinion, but they really dance with the area of how subtle you actually can be. So I'm going to roll over iPhone, and I see that the over state indicates that I can click. If I click down, they're not even giving you a down state anymore. They've gotten, as I mentioned, very subtle. So I've got up, over as I roll over an object, down, which I can style, and then the active state here. Really, really subtle. So if I want to do that in my own design here, or let's just look at what the default states are. I'm going to go ahead and just go to Preview within the application. And what I've got is the up state of all these objects. I've got an over state, so notice that it gets darker. As I click, I've got a down state, and when I release and it switches to that active state, I can tell that I'm on the About page. All right, you say, thank you, Muse team. Really appreciate you indicated that to me, but now you're driving me crazy trying to skin and style all of these states. So let's talk about that. Traditionally, you're right, it was always kind of a pain to come in and unstyle this lovely default styled set. So the first thing you need to learn about widgets within Muse is that they're pretty deep, and there's a hierarchical structure to that widget, and depending on where you are in that hierarchy, different attributes, different things will be true. So I'm going to go ahead and select this widget, and I'm going to come over to a couple panels that I've pulled out here because I want us to be able to look at them constantly as I'm working here. In fact, I'm going to add one more. Let's go ahead and bring over the States panel. And I'm going to grab this guy and add it to my little set of persistent menu stuff here, persistent panels. All right, there's my States panel. What you'll notice is when I click nothing on the canvas, this upper left-hand corner, this is telling you where you are in the hierarchical structure of my site. So with nothing clicked, I'm at a page level. If I click the first time, Muse is indicating that I'm now at a menu level. I have the menu selected. If I roll over something, I get a little tooltip here, kind of subtle, but it's letting me know that if I were to click, where would it bring me in that hierarchical structure? So if I roll over here and click once, I'm now at a menu item level, so I've gone a level deeper. Maybe I want to click on that word home and change the text. You'll notice I don't see any text controls here right now because I'm at a button level. What I can do is change the fill color for this object. If I click yet again, I'm now at a text level. So I can come in with the text tool and I can change the color of my font and such. Now the key to working with widgets is if you've gone too far, you want to back out of what you're doing, you can do that by hitting the escape key. So if I want to come back up a level and I want to go to the container level for this particular item, hitting escape takes me up that level. If I hit escape again, it's going to take me up and up. So double clicking or clicking once will bring me more deeply into the hierarchical structure, and escape will take me out of it. Now if we look here for a moment at states and styles, notice for this object I've got the normal state, that over state, mouse down, and active state. Now I mentioned that just about every object within Muse can have these same states. Let's say I come in and I want to just add a simple photo here. So I'm going to draw a container, and under Fill, I'll go in and grab an image from that starter file. All right, we'll grab just this guy here, and I'm going to set it to go ahead and scale to fill my container and adjust its position. So I now have an object, as we saw in that example. I've got an image that I want to work with. If I want to indicate that this is something that can be interacted with, I'm going to want to play with those states. So this is where life is interesting. The normal state, I'm going to go ahead and just thinking. I'm going to change the normal state's opacity here. I'm going to lighten it up. So I'm going to set this to about 70%. So it's a lighter instance. If I then click and go to the rollover state, I'm going to bring that back up to full color, so 100%. So notice it's a lot easier when you have the states panel open. I've got my normal state very subtly light. When I roll over it, I get another darker version. Mouse down, I could decide that I really do want to darken it up. So under fill, I can add a fill color of black. Maybe not. Maybe I'm lying. That's interesting. Because I've got it with a fill color, so It's okay. It's time to stump the chump again. Let's go ahead and do something terrible, and we're going to add a stroke to it instead. So I'm going to come in and give it, I can pull a color from my image so it's not that awful. And I'll go ahead and give it a fill color for that stroke. So notice that I'm adding a stroke to the exterior of the image. So I now have the normal state, I've got an over state, and a mouse down state. So with these pieces now, I've got some nice visual indicators. Let's go in now back to my menu a little bit. And now that I've shown you how these pieces work, there's kind of the maddening task of styling out this menu to look like you'd like it to. Now, originally, until the last release, the most recent one we did in February, what I would have to do is sort of painfully come into the objects and remove the defaults that Adobe gave me so that I could define my own. Now, as you're working, when I come into my object, there's some tricks that are going to make life a little bit simpler if you think about them up front before you start your work. And one is this idea of edit together. Now, the Apple menu used to be very similar to this, but they would have rounded corners on the right and left instance of their design. So as you're working, if you want to achieve that, when you have edit together defined, what that means is that anything I do to one of these objects, it's going to apply to all of the siblings, everything at that same level. So if I come into home here and I just want to select a different font, so I'm going to come on into my text area here and pick a swell little playful font, unkept bold here. And let's go ahead and give it just a color for now. Notice that what I've done to one object there applies to all the objects. So maybe I thought that was a good idea. I'm not trying to win any design awards here as usual. But I've gone in and played with the text. And it kindly allowed me to, because edit together was defined here, to go ahead and apply that to all of them. If I want to now create a variance, let's say I want to add that rounded corner effect to home and contact. What I can do is come into the widget options, uncheck edit together, and now if I come to this leftmost object, I'm going to round out its corners. And maybe I'll exaggerate it just a little bit more to be really tacky. I know that's so like 5 years ago. I'll go ahead and copy that value here. I'm going to come to the contact, and I'm going to round out those further corners and go ahead and set that at 15 pixels. So what I was able to do, and this is where you have to think before you work a little bit, when you turn off edit together, it's going to stop making edits across all of the siblings. So you'll want to try to focus on what do they all have in common first, and then what is the variance there. Now, I've spoken about this new feature as of February, and this one's pretty terrific. It allows you to come on into any widget, maybe one that you've defined, maybe one that we've defined in a frightening way. Right mouse on that, and in the menu I can select Clear All Styling. What it's going to do, get ready, is wipe away everything. I have an incredibly unstyled menu. Now when you know what you're doing, that can be very powerful. Because let me go ahead and put that back again for a second. I just want to talk about this a little bit more. For each object that you have, you're going to really want to pay attention to where you are in your states. Because when you click on an object, notice that I'm on the mouse down state for portfolio. If I click on contact, yeah, there you go, that's not bad. Somehow in my world, maybe if I switch over here and then switch back to about, see how it jumps to the normal state? If you're not keeping an eye on where you are in the hierarchy, it just can be very frustrating. So I may be on the active state here, I click over to this guy, when I come back to, let's say, contact, it's defaulting to the normal state. So as you're working, really paying attention to that. Now you'll notice here I've got swatches, graphic styles, paragraph style, and states all pulled in. And that's by design because these are all different elements that you can define styles that you then can apply to many things. So let's say I'm going to work on I'm trying to think of a use case here, but let's say I come in and I do define a menu style and I have a totally separate different menu. So I'm going to pull out a second menu here. This is called trying to think fast. So I'm going to go back to my widget library. I'm going to go into my menu area, and I'm going to press and drag a vertical menu. So for this site, I might have the interior pages have a vertical menu, and these guys here have another menu. Now, this is a use case that's going to fall apart really quickly, because what I probably would do is come on over and duplicate that guy and just change it to vertical so that all the attributes carry over. Even the bizarre rounded corners, which I would turn off, but we'll leave it there for now. So that's one way you can work. Again, I mentioned that widgets are configurable and stylable, and the beauty there is that any custom styling that I define still preserves the basic functionality of my widget. So if I go into plan mode here and decide that, heck, the about page for some reason needs to be between home and about, and I go back to my master, notice that it reordered those pages for me automatically because they're tied to the site plan. As you're working though, depending on the different elements, let's give a very different use case. So let's say I've got a look and feel that I actually like here for my portfolio, and I want to apply it to another object. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and step things up a little bit. I'm going to go grab, well, I'm not ready to step it up, sorry. Having a little conversation in my own head again today. As I'm working, let's go ahead and style this out a little bit more. So I've got my normal state. Let's say I want to change my active state, and I want to kind of go for that subtle underlying behavior that seems to be trending well. What I can do is with the container selected here, in the stroke area, I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the link here so that it's not linking all four sides of my container. I'm going to go ahead and add a 2-pixel line to the bottom of my active state. So a nice subtle way when you click on the active state of a page to show where you are. Now here I am, if I want to test this, I'm going to click on Portfolio. I'm going to go over to Active. See, perfect example of how, because Edit Together was turned off, it's not applying to all my objects. So I'm going to undo that for a second. Let's go ahead and get that guy turned back on again. I'm going to say Edit Together. I'm going to come into About now, and making sure I'm in my active state. I've got my stroke. Let's try to apply it to another guy now that I have Edit Together enabled. We're going to come on in and select this object, active state, come on into stroke. I'm going to turn on a stroke of 2 pixels and make sure it's got that black color. So now you'll notice all of my objects are back in that Edit Together mode. Now it's always nice, the Muse team, as they've evolved our product, they've gone and improved things. So even though I turned off Edit Together in order to define some differences here, it's remembered those unique attributes, and it's now back in an Edit Together mode. So I can come in and apply global attributes even though I have differences here. All right, I know this is not high fashion, but we don't have time for high fashion. Let's say I thought this was terrific and I wanted to apply it to something very different. I'm going to come on into my panels here, and I'm going to grab a tabbed panel and press and drag it onto the canvas. And let's say I thought that, bear with me, that the look and feel of this guy I wanted to apply to my tabs here. What I can do is come in and save style sets for colors and graphics and typography that can be applied to other objects. So I know this is sad. I'm going to keep making it sadder. So let's go ahead and give it a background fill. I'm going to grab a scary green. I've got that on my normal state. Let's go ahead and show the active state. I'll come on in and grab a variation of that scary green and just darken it up a little bit. I know we're not moving in a good direction, but I now have a few different variances here. I've got a font, I've got a stroke on the bottom, and as I go through each of the states, I can see that work. All right, let's pretend for a minute I thought this was amazing. What I need to do, and I will be the first to tell you this, and with my colleagues on this session with me, I'm the first to tell you this. I really, really, really want to see the consolidation of all of our states, all of our styles into one object. The whole idea of being able to just combine them all and then pick and choose what becomes a style, I think would be fantastic. But I need to show you how this works today, just so you understand. So let's say I thought that the about here was perfect and I wanted to apply it to other places. What I want to do is come on in. There's my normal state. I've got the color, the font, the stroke or the lack of applied to this object. I want to retain that so that I can apply it down here. What I'm going to do is come in and create a paragraph style. So I'll click into that text level. Notice how it really depends on where you are. Let me show that again. So I've got the object selected. I'm at a menu item level. And for the life of me, I can't apply a paragraph style. It's grayed out. It's because I'm not tunneling deeply enough. I haven't gone to the text level. So I'm going to click one more time. Now that I'm at a text level, I can come in and maybe, I swear I was there a second ago. Type T on the keyboard so that I'm at a text level. Come on, Dani. Okay. That's funny. Having a funny moment. There's my text object. Colby, you're welcome to save me here. So I've got my guy here. Let's go in and at least start with my states, the colors that I'm working with. So I've gone in and created this very unique green shade, and I want to make sure I retain that. The trick around swatches and colors is applying a named color to an object. So with this color object here, I'm going to go ahead and click, and notice that by default it's a named colored value. If I unclick, I'm going to come in and call this my normal. So I might call it button normal, but I'm not going to really put a color value to it, just give it a name. Let's go ahead and go a little deeper now. So I'm going to go to my active color, beautiful as that is. I'm going to create a second graphic style. Did I do that right? Let's try this again. So I've got my button normal color, and I've got my color swatch here for button normal. I probably would come in and give this more of a generic name. So we're going to just call this color, let's try it, button light. Click OK. I'm going to then come into the active state. I've got that darker color. I'm going to go on in and create a new graphic style. So I've got active. I'm going to come into this guy. I'm going to call it button active and click OK. So in essence, what I'm doing is creating a separate graphic style for each of my states. I've also saved out a color swatch. I'll save this next color out as well. And I'm going to call this button dark and click OK. So I've named a color. I've named a graphic style. Next thing I want to do is deal with my text. I'm going to give this another try. I'm not sure why it's struggling with me. So for my paragraph styles, let's come in here and do it a little differently. I'm going to come to this guy. Let's just see what we did here real quick. Not sure why it's ignoring me, but that's okay. I'm going to come in. I've got unkempt bold at 17. And paragraph styles that are still ignoring me. So let's try this. I'm going to go in here, change it to unkempt bold at 17. And we'll go ahead and make sure it's set to black. And I want to define that as a paragraph style here. So I'm going to call this button text. We're going to talk a little bit more about paragraph styles in a minute, but I now have that guy applied. Next thing I'm going to do is come on into my tabbed panel and now apply some of these attributes. Now the magic that I showed you applies to all of our widgets, so I could clear all the styling. I can even clear the widget contents. So we wanted you to understand that a tabbed panel could have images and text. By clearing those out, you don't have to bother deleting them from each instance of that tabbed panel. Again, I think it's still good for us to give you that default state, but it's awfully amazing to be able to clear all the styling and the widget contents by default. As I'm working here, though, I'm going to come to this object. I'm going to make sure that that good old edit together is checked. And I'm going to come in and define the way I want my tabs to look now. So I may say that I want, in the active state of this tab, I want it to have that active color, that fabulous color I applied. I want to go in and apply the text that we've decided is good. And I may center this text or add some spacing and do a variance on that style. But I'm able to come in and apply that from one object to another by saving out graphic styles and paragraph styles. Now I'm going to show you something interesting. If I come to the Swatches panel here and just bring up the right mouse menu and delete all unused, what you'll notice is it boils it down to only the colors that are actively being used in my design. I'm clicking on my little menu there, which is really odd. But I have those colors here. Now the way that the world starts to be powerful, let's say I went in one more time here and I grabbed an accordion, pressed and dragged it onto the canvas, drags it down here, have edit together selected. In fact, I could even delete some of these default panels. Come to that first instance, I'm going to go ahead and give it my text and my images. Sorry, it's so scary. And I'm going to add a couple more accordion elements. And notice there's a lot of styling I haven't done here. But because I've gone in and defined them, let's say a real designer came in and sat down next to me and said, Dani, what a mess you're making. I need to clean it up. The nice part about it is as you propagate styles throughout your site, it makes it very easy for you to make global changes. So let's say that designer was really here, which they're not. What I could easily do is come into any one object here and decide that the text is really looking terrible. So I'm going to come on in and maybe pick a much nicer font, Modula 1. And I'm going to get it a nice size, and I'm going to stop making it so dark. We're going to pick up on just a nice lighter green here a little bit. Whatever I want to do, I can come in and really change the style of that text. Make it a little larger, and maybe even decide that it should be centered in all instances here. So I'm going to center it. So I've now cleaned my act up, and notice what's happened. Under paragraph styles, I now get this little plus button. What it's doing is telling me that I'm taking a base style and adding some variances here. If I want to right mouse there and redefine the style, now clear overrides is going to strip it back to that terrible default design that we had. But redefine style is going to go through, let me even undo that and kind of prepare you here for a second. So if I come in, and before I do that actually, let's make sure that this guy has had those styles applied to it. So I'm going to make sure that button text is applied to all of my menu items. It's here in this area. I'm going to come into that one instance that I like, button text. I'm going to make sure that it's defining the style. So I'm going to redefine the style that's being used to apply to all of these objects. Now remember how, let's just see, I'm also creating pretty good mess here in my design. Let's go in and grab that menu one more time just to kind of show this case a little bit. I'm going to go back to my horizontal design. And now that I have these styles defined, I'm going to select one of my objects. I'm going to change that button text to apply. I'm going to come in and change the styling. So in that normal state, I'm going to select the normal color. Let's see, my text color seems to be falling away from me here. Let's go ahead and change that to black. But the idea is, as you're working, what you can do when these guys are all tied together, you can make global changes more easily. Now, a lot of folks do not understand the difference between character styles and paragraph styles. So let's talk about that for a minute. I've got some very lovely Greeking text here, but it's some text that I can work with for what we're going to do. So let's say for this text, I want to apply a style that I'm going to use across the site. Now, folks get confused. There's something called character styles, and there's paragraph styles over here. The big difference is, I guess in the world of InDesign, it probably comes up a little bit more. If you are designing a whole lot of paragraphs and you want to call out with emphasis certain aspects of that content, what you want to do is use character styles for bits of content that might be inside of a larger paragraph style, and use paragraph styles for more global, big groups, big blocks, paragraphs of text. Let's come in and get a style going onto this text that I have here. So I'm going to select it, and we'll go ahead and go with this font that I'm using. No, we won't. Let's change it out. We'll use a little Source Sans Pro. Go ahead and make it a nice black color, and leave it alone from there. We'll make it a little larger. All right, so I have a basic style that I want to use for all the text across my site. What I want to do is come in and define that as a paragraph style. So I'm going to come in and click to create that new style, and I'll name it. I may call this body text. What you'll notice is that paragraph styles have something really important, and that's paragraph tags, or P tags. Now, in the P tag list, I can define my body text. That would be a classic P tag or paragraph tag. I can also come in, if these were headlines, and define what's known as H1, H2. So this is a hierarchical structure. The way that this comes into play is, I'm just looking at the clock. Don't ask me what happened to the last 45 minutes. The way that this comes into play has to do with search engine optimization. It allows search engines to know the hierarchical structure of a site. I get to go into fast forward mode here a little bit. So with this text now, I'm going to go ahead and define a P tag for it and click OK. I'm going to go back, though, to another style that we defined. Let's say this menu style, the button text, and I want to go into the style options there and make sure that I give that some sort of a hierarchical structure. So I'm going to let that be an H2 subhead and click OK. Now, what becomes really fun about this as you're working is once you define these, if you have a client and you need to do new projects on a regular basis, or as a designer you wireframe out content that you then flesh out for a client, or you just work from time to time and you don't like the default states of everything I've shown you from the Muse team. When you save out these objects, when you define them with these graphic styles, you're then able to add them to library elements that you can easily reuse. So I'm going to come on over into my library, and I've got a My Name section here. If I liked this menu an awful lot, I can come in and add it to any library I might have. Let's say Dani Widgets, and I call it my beautiful menu. That will be there, and I could then come to any project, brand new project here. Let's keep these panels open. So notice that there's nothing going on here. If I go back to my beautiful menu and I drag it onto the canvas, notice that it automatically populates everything with the normal graphic style state, the paragraph styles, and any custom swatches that might be associated with that design. So let's say I come back to this main design that we've been working on, and I decide I want to clean up my act because I really need help here. I can go to that flat design that we looked at in the beginning of the session, that My Portfolio, and I'm going to come on in and just grab some elements here. I've got body text. Watch what happens. Look at the left at all my paragraph styles, graphic styles, and such. When I drag that onto the canvas, notice that a new style appears. It's called Text Simple. What I can do now is try to end my pane. I can say anything that's defined as body text. Watch this. I've got Text Simple. I'm going to go to body text, and I'm just going to delete it. And when I go, or I'm going to add a new one, depending on what you're doing. If I hit the delete button, it's going to say, great, this occurs in your project. Before you delete it, do you want to use a style that might be out there? I say, sure, go ahead and apply the text simple and replace all instances of that text for me. I can come in and grab, let's see, a nice button that's got that subtle flat design applied to it, drag that on the canvas. And this time I'll come into my, I don't have standalone buttons here, so we'll let that be for a moment. I also have a nice top menu here that's got a nice effect to it. So menu topped pinned. I'm going to drag this guy onto the canvas. And let's just take a, well, what this does is for the states, it's just got nice subtlety here. So notice in the active state, it gives that nice heavy stroke to let you know where you are in that active state. I've got a rollover state, a normal state, but it's a nice, well-designed, because I didn't do it, example for your work here. As I drag that guy over, if I've applied styles and states to it, I can just come in and take my tragic style and state here and apply it over as I'm working. I've eaten up way too much time here. But let's kind of stop and review a little bit of what we've talked about. I'm going to go to a more finished, well, I think we can stay here. Let me show you something else here. That is all on my master, which is pretty tragic. I'm going to come in and select it all and cut it off. And let's just go to an individual page and put this here, because there's a couple more playdate items that I want to share with you. Let's get this guy here. Let's go to another page. So in that design that I showed you, that finished site, there's some nice subtlety. We're going to look at a couple different ones here. Let's see. So if I come to this design, notice I've got that nice button there. It says sign up for free, and I roll over it, and it's using, it's got states, obviously. There's the over state, but it's also doing this really smooth CSS transition. It's not just showing up and then going away. So if I come in and let's take a look at some of these elements, I have that button. I'm just going to bring this guy over real quick. I've got the portfolio button. Perhaps I've got another one that's going to be about. And I've got these nice buttons that are defined, and they have those smooth little flat design applied to them. I can see them here in my styles. Now, what I want to do is have actually more of a coordinated effort in my object. So let's look at the finished design a little bit. Go to that first guy. Notice as I come along here, I've got portfolio and I've got story. If I roll over anywhere in this object, see how story is changing? It's changing a lot of things also. It's changing its text. It's changing its stroke. Now, if I roll on to the object, nothing really happens. It's like anywhere in this region, that state is changing. So how did I make that happen? Probably I didn't. Probably a designer did. I'll stop picking on myself soon. There's something we offer which is known as the states button. And the idea with the states button is if I have separate objects, I'm able to combine them together and unify their states. So let me show you this really quickly because we're out of time. I'm going to come in and create a container. I'm going to fill the container with an image. Let's go to my starter files. Actually, I was in the right spot. Let's go back to that. I'm just going to use the pens here, and I'm going to scale to fill, and I'm going to center it. Kind of nice. And the next thing I want to do is go in and add my little portfolio button. So I've got it. I'm going to press and drag that. I'll show you a trick if I cut it. Notice that when I did that, it didn't layer well. Clicking on an object and then pasting is going to automatically paste on top of the current object that you have selected. So now I've got my cute little button, and it's got its states. And in the image, we're going to go ahead and apply that sort of state world that we had before. So I'm going to keep the rollover at full percentage. I'm going to keep normal at about 70%. So it's kind of gray, such that when I roll over this, it's going to get darker. If I set it back there, let's see, come back up to 100% real. Okay, so I'm here, I've got normal. Let's see if I can get this to work right here. If I can work right. It's exaggerated, we'll do 50%. Okay, I've got my normal state and then my rollover. I'm going to define at 100%. All right, normal and rollover. And I've got this great portfolio, which got nice states too. If I preview this page in the browser, a bad thing happens. I can roll over my image, which is great, but notice my button doesn't work. So if I kind of roll down here and head to my button, it goes into its active state, but then the background goes into a deactive state. So it's kind of a tragedy. It's just really, there's no way to unify these states. In comes the state button. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my library of widgets. I'm going to go in the buttons directory and I'm going to press and drag a state button onto the canvas. I'm going to use the oh so magic clear all contents and clear all styling. So I get this nice little empty bucket that doesn't look like much. One trick is make it pretty small and then you lose it on the canvas. So show your content so you know what you're doing there. All right, so I've got this small little states button. I'm going to select all of this content. The reason why it's small is when I drag this to the upper left corner of the states button, it's going to grow that button. It's going to grow that button to fit all of my content. It did odd things there that I didn't expect. Let's come on into fill and make sure that that's still set to scale to fill and centered. Okay. Because they're now inside the states button, see it's a states button with a container and with a button. Now when I preview in the browser, I can roll off. When I roll on, everything changes. I lost everything on there. See, this is what's great when the lead of quality engineering is actually part of your session. We can roll back on this and see what happened there. But for my placed image there, we decided this was going to be at 50% from normal. And rollover would go back to 100%. I'm not going to fiddle with it too much right now. But I would go in and set those states. In fact, I'll do a little bit of Martha Stewart. I'm going to go into my library and grabbed that button state, or that state button, put it on the canvas, preview in browser, and I get this unified behavior. Now, the original design did not change the graphics, so I'm not seeing that, but I can roll anywhere on that area and it's going to change the button. All right, lastly, and somewhat interestingly, there is the wacky widget of the week, which we showcased yesterday. I did have someone on Facebook point out the fact that it was already free, but I'm okay with that if you're okay with that. It's still something that I wanted to show to you guys this week as part of this jam session. So the free widget of the week is from Muse Resources. And it's an add-on, it's a widget. The Muse out-of-the-box state for all of these components does not have CSS transitions. Many of you that have learned to kind of work around what we have and don't have learned in the widgets library, I could come in and use a composition widget, a blank composition widget here. And in this widget, I could have sort of a button, and then when I roll over that button, I can show a transition, a CSS transition to fade. But it's kind of a pain to use a different kind of widget to simulate the behavior. What happens with this widget that we're showing off this week, let's go over there. I am going to get to questions, I promise, if there are some. Let's go ahead and drag this on the canvas. So I've got a rollover transition widget. You can place it on your master page so that it applies to everything on your site, or you can place it in one location on an individual page. Notice I can set the transition duration. So I can say, go ahead and take a second and make sure that you ease in and out as you transition on those objects. If I come in to now preview this page in the browser, I'm missing some fonts, but that's okay. What I'll get is instead of, and I've exaggerated, it's going really slow. 1 second is pretty slow, but without doing anything else in the design, I'm getting this really smooth CSS transition See how it's exaggerated? It's very much in slow-mo, but I thought it would be an easier way to show it. It allows you to just get those jobs. That's notice here, I didn't do it on purpose because it's pretty tragic, but notice how the changes in fonts and colors and size when you're applying that widget give it kind of a really cool, again, design-wise this is tragic, but I get this really nice effect because it's using CSS transitions. All right, people. That's the completion of the lecture for the day. Let's see if there's any outstanding questions. Laurel and Mark and Colby, if they've already been answered, you can stop me really fast. I'm going to come back here and just look at these. Again, I'm not sure what you guys have covered or not. Differences, but let's see if everybody already answered you and I am now going to lie and contradict. But the difference between Business Catalyst and in-browser editing from a client editing perspective, Colby or Laurel say shut up if it's already been answered, and if not, I'm going to keep answering. The big difference is that Business Catalyst has in-context editing. Laurel's going to try to stop me maybe. Say go or don't go. In-browser editing has different features because it was sort of born more on Business Catalyst. What happened is because in-browser editing knows the back end of Business Catalyst, we could take more things for granted because there's a back-end CMS. Laurel says go for the whole thing, you got it. When we started working with in-browser editing and Muse, we wanted to let you host on any hosting platform that you wanted. So GoDaddy, Media Temple, you name it. And in doing that, the feature set had to be more generic. So in some ways, we're still working to implement some of those same features that we have on the Business Catalyst side. Long story short is if you are hosting on Adobe Business Catalyst, if you've taken a domain and taken it live there, you may want to look at the in-browser editing features that you have because you may have more functionality than you do on any hosting platform. So when Muse is updated, should I open, resave, and upload my old sites? Absolutely, as long as you do some checking. So we try to work hard. Let's say, I think it was last release, there were some baseline shifts that text designed in a certain way would not align in the browser. So we went through and fixed it, and we made it such that if you open up an old design, there's a checkbox that's checked that says, go ahead and continue to use the old method for aligning text. If you say file new, we would use a new method. In a nutshell, we try to make sure that when we generate a new version of Muse and you open up an old design, we're not going to break things that you may have done differently in the past. But you do want to go ahead and create a trial, click through your whole site, make sure that everything still looks really good, and then definitely republish. The main reason for that is the web is a moving target, and it's the engineering team problem to try to have consistent compatibility with all of the browsers, all of the platforms, and all of the devices that are out there, and refreshing your site when we do give new releases allows you to take care of that. All right. So can I do a session on Photoshop and SVG and Muse? Sure. I think that's probably coming up in the docket pretty soon. I think it is exciting. What I would do is broaden that out a little bit and talk about all sorts of content that you bring in. So SVG would be Illustrator, of course. Photoshop would be layered Photoshop files, flattening them out, optimizing them for high-resolution devices. We can definitely add that to the docket. We've done it in the past, but it still changes as the apps that you're working with change. So yes, I will talk to Laurel about getting that up in the next couple months. Couple weeks maybe, but months. Okay, as no one has been mentioned, can anyone tell me how to shut off mobile and tablet versions as I'm still creating them? Totally. So what I do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go ahead and for the sake of speed here, open up a site that has all three layouts. So I'm going to open up that starter file. You'll notice that I've got a tablet layout for this. So there's my desktop layout. I've got a tablet design and a phone design. If I am not ready to show it to the real world, I may want to publish the latest desktop version, but make sure tablet and phone do not get published. If you pull down on File to Site Properties, maybe, notice I've got desktop, tablet, and phone. Desktop does not have it, but tablet, notice there is a redirect from desktop checkbox. Uncheck it when you're not ready to publish the tablet site. On phone, uncheck it when you're not ready to publish it. Go ahead and hit publish. This is going to only push desktop up. When you're ready, go back and check it and republish, and that will take care of your problem. Okay, next question. Come on, little Connect. I'm reading here. SVG files, when I place them, they show as squished in design view, less squished in preview, and normal in the browser. We're working on it. We have some improvements. There's an engineer on the team that loves SVG and is doing some great enhancements. You may want to just push to the forum your specific scenario because there may be workarounds now. You'll also want to keep your ear to the ground for enhancements in our private beta program as we continue to improve on it. Will there be a blog widget in Muse in the future? You're allowed to send me an email if you're interested in blogging. I am playing with what I think is the coolest blogging widget ever, but I want to be proven wrong. So send an email to Dani at Adobe and tell me you're interested in blogging, and I will let you play with a widget that is under development. I need some feedback. It's developed by someone in the community, but it's important to me that we have more blogging options, so I've kind of commissioned that it be designed. Will there be a Business Catalyst class? You have to talk to the Business Catalyst folks. On the Muse team, we try to look at all the platforms. And so we're not really driving people to the CMS backend of Business Catalyst, but there are folks on the Business Catalyst side that will do that more. Okay, you've wasted not only a full hour, but an hour and 2 minutes with the Adobe Muse team yet again. Thank you so much for all your time. If there are future jam session topics, I did capture the how to prepare assets to be delivered inside Muse during the session today. But let me know if there are more topics you'd like to cover. I will go back and read the chat so I can see what you people were talking about while I was busily talking in circles. Thank you everyone for your time, and we will see you next week. If you want this recording link in Connect, I will go grab it. And if you give me a few hours, you will see it on YouTube, on the YouTube channel. I will be right back.